Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
what do you call it when you're hiding an appealing fruit and you can't tell anyone about it?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Secret of banana. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I think I saw you figure out what the joke was going to be.
I'm just tired.
Did you like that there was a
tired.
joke within the joke?
Yes, I very much appreciated it.
Because at first I was going to say a tropical fruit, and I was like, are bananas, are they really a tropical fruit? They feel so every day, even though they are kind of a tropical fruit.
They grow on banana trees.
Thanks. Yeah, that doesn't actually resolve the question at all.
Banana trees seem tropical.
If only I had been wearing my banana outfit to record this.
Yes, the listeners would have really appreciated
my banana pants, banana shirt outfit that is really relevant to these games because one of them sounds sort of like banana.
That'll be our blog cover image so that everybody can appreciate it.
So I have to take a picture of me. I have to put it on and take a picture?
Yes.
Okay. I'll have you do it this weekend. Anyway, folks, I'm your appealing host, Madelyn.
I'm your yawning host, Emma.
Emma.
I'm sorry.
Pull it together.
I'm pulling it together. I'm really trying. I've got all these threads and they're being held together through sheer force of will.
I'm proud of you.
Thank
Keep it up. So this week on the show, we'll be talking about the very exciting and not at all yawn-worthy games, Secret of Mana, and, oh my god, Into the Breach. I literally almost forgot it.
You figured it out. I'm proud of you. You got it in the end.
I was looking at my notes.
Well, you didn't have to tell them that.
Alright, let's do it once more. Once more. Into the Breach. That's our new game. See, I just did that so I could set myself up for the joke.
Of course, yes. You have immense foresight.
The long humor game here. Anyway, so we can get through this before Emma has to take a nap.
I'm fine.
I believe you. Let's talk about Secret of Mana.
Heck yeah. So, I thought that we had this game, but we did not.
We had Children of Mana.
Yes.
The DS version from the World of Mana series.
Because apparently Secret of Mana was on, every system except the DS.
Can you repeat that? So there's a whole show is you yawning.
I'm gonna try. Listeners, it's been a long day, okay? But we got this. It's noon on Sunday. I'm feeling good. It was apparently on every single system except the DS. I was very confused when I was looking at it. I was like, I swear we had this on the DS. But I went to the Mana series page and tried to figure out which one we had. And yes, it was Children of Mana that we had, not Secret of Mana.
Not that I think we ever played a significant portion of that game.
I feel like it was broken? No. Golden Sun was broken. We had Golden Sun, and it was incapable of saving. So I played, the first 10 hours of that, 3 times, because I would just leave it on and plugged in. Speedrun strats.
I was worried about you there for a minute. I was like, Emma, I don't remember you sitting and playing anything for 10 hours straight.
No, because I would be like, okay, it's fine. I'll just, leave it on and I'll only play this game. And then I'd be like, I want to play another game. And I would turn it off and lose all my progress. But we're not talking about that, or Children of Mana. We're talking about Secret of Mana.
Can you imagine if you had to only play one game at a time?
No.
In your life? Not you had to leave it running all the time. That would be, it's 2019. But if there was, some reason that you could only play one game at a time.
I mean, is it Fire Emblem? Because I could do it.
I realized that as I said that has exactly been what you have been doing. But again, folks, my thesis that you have to be playing 13 games at once still holds true. Anyway, I was researching this, and at first researching Secret of Mana, the 1993 action RPG developed by Square, no Enix, for the SNES.
For the SNES.
I call it that. I hope other people call it that. Obviously I did never have one.
It's fun to say. Who cares if other people don't call it that?
Sometimes I worry that everyone else calls it SNES, and I'm over here being like, SNES, 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 and they're like, what a buffoon. Sometimes I worry people think I'm a buffoon anyway, but SNES particularly brings that out at me.
What's the point? Bring us back to the point, Madelyn.
My point being that as I was researching this game, at first I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe I should get it. It's on the Switch, the whole collection that they said was not going to come to America, but did this summer, that has the first 3 Mana games, only one of which really includes Mana in the title. That's not true. Trials of Mana now, but it wasn't known as that for a while.
Yes. Well, because it was never brought westward before now, the third one.
Exactly. And they also have a 3D remake for the PS4.
That is apparently bad, by the way.
Well, it highlights the flaws of the game by making it seem modern. But that is part of what I want to discuss about Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana is beloved. It makes our stalwart Wikipedia page of the best games of all time.
Oh, good. That's how you know.
Look, it is how you know. I have mentioned that page dozens of times on the show. It's truly the pinnacle of video game criticism, is the Wikipedia page, best video games of all time. Super beloved, lots of articles talking about how much people love it. Do you understand it?
What do you mean?
So, this game seems... I can't believe I'm going to say this again about an old game, but, innovative for the time, but also, well, we can talk about the development, but it seems that even for games at the time, a lot of it was kind of simplistic, and, it doesn't have the kind of legacy that a lot of the sort of similar games of the genre have from this time, and yet people still, love it. And I'm trying to figure out if that's just because people have a lot of nostalgia for it, or if it really is a good game that's worth me dropping $40 to get 3 of them.
I don't know. I haven't played it. What I remember I really liking in Children of Mana, which until now I thought was Secret of Mana, and I've been a silly person since I was 8 years old, apparently. But what I really liked in Children of Mana is that it's it's all very nature environments. You live in a forest, and there's a big tree that's your god or something. I don't know. I don't fully remember.
Yeah, the mana tree.
Yes, there's the mana tree. And I liked that it was so set. It was very firmly set in nature world, as opposed to a lot of, you can conjure up generic fantasy JRPG world, right? It's there's some nature and there's some cities, and then there's sort of the subspecies of some of the Final Fantasies where it's highly industrial, right? Yeah. But also has magic. But I don't know if you can necessarily think of a lot, and I don't know if it's entirely set in nature, but it's at least very nature focused. But I can't really think of a lot where it's you're just living in the forest. You're just a forest person. I don't know. And the sort of emphasis on the natural beauty of it. It was a very green game is what I remember. But that made it pretty striking to look at least.
So developers, if you're taking notes, color green in for 2020.
Well, you know what? It's better than browns.
You sound this is my whole Kingdom Hearts blog right now. Is Josh being everything's dark, everything's gray. And this is you being it should be green. Anyway, for those of you who are not familiar with Secret of Mana, like I said, it's now 25-ish years old, 26 years old game.
Yep.
It was originally a spin-off from the Final Fantasy series, the first game in the series, which in Japan is... Oof, let's see if I can do this, not ugly.
Seiken Densetsu.
Thank you, Emma. Which in America was known as Final Fantasy Adventure, and in Europe was known as Mystic Quest.
Was it actually a Final Fantasy spin-off, or were they just marketing it that way in the US?
I'm not sure.
Because it seems like they were just marketing it that way. It's like, ooh, it's Final Fantasy-like, and Final Fantasy has name recognition in the West. Maybe, sort of.
That's valid.
I guess they didn't actually, really, though. Huh. Was it 7 the first Final Fantasy to come to the West? That wasn't until 1997.
I cannot tell you that I am an expert in...
It's still a better name for a Western release than Seiken Densetsu, I guess.
Well, that is not a high bar to clear. Especially in 1993. I don't know if it's actually a spin-off and that it's related to that world in any way, but certainly because it's like an RPG combat thing, feels close enough that I can call it a spin-off in what that might have meant 25 years ago, as opposed to spin-offs now. It's from the same company. Companies can only make one game, right?
Yes.
So, has to be a spin-off.
But I can't believe that you're trying to trash talk it when it had cooperative multiplayer.
Okay, I was about to get to that. Yes. For 3 people.
Yeah.
What a weird choice.
Well, there's 3 characters, right?
I know. But couldn't you have added a 4th character?
No, Malin, because then you have to rewrite the whole story.
Well, maybe
or you just have, like, Joe McSchmo, who every once in a while has, like, a, yes, I agree line.
So that's going to be good that's a good idea for next week's side quest. Joe McSchmo would be great for what we're going to talk about.
Okay. Anyway,
yes, had local cooperative multiplayer. Apparently so did Children of Mana.
I don't know. I'm not... How do you do that on the DS? I don't know.
You have to have 2 cartridges, but you can play together.
Like, you just, like, link them together with one of the cords or whatever?
I think by the time of the DS, you did not need a cord, but that is the idea, yes.
With the virtual imaginary cord?
The virtual cord, yes. Anyway, in this game, which it may or may not be a spin-off, and which certainly had local multiplayer, you play as... For a long time, they were unnamed, except in the manual, but their names that they have now are Randy, Prim, and Popoy.
Pope Boy?
Popoy.
Popoy, okay. I'm sorry, you
Popoy.
didn't pronounce that well enough. I was like, I don't remember that being one of their names, but sure, Pope Boy. Why not?
Pope Boy has the power of Christ. Anyway, these 3 players have different strengths. Randy is a brawling fighter.
God, Randy is a terrible name, too.
With an I. Randy with an I.
Okay, that's a little better.
For a man.
It's still a little better.
I think Randy with an I. I think of Randy with an I as like the woman's version of the name.
Sure, but the standard Randy is such a terrible name that just putting the I there already makes it better, no matter what your gender is.
Shout out to all the Randys that listen to the podcast.
Sorry, Randy. I can't say your name without wanting to cringe a little bit.
Anyway, Randy is kind of our protagonist, who eventually meets Prim. Randy discovers that he wields the mana sword.
Well, he, finds it, right?
Yeah. Which, to give you just a little bit of lore background, don't worry, Emma, I'll keep it to 30 seconds.
Good.
In this world, mana is the energy source. There's this ancient civilization that built this, like, gigantic castle in the sky, basically, the mana fortress, which pissed off the gods, of course, wouldn't you be pissed?
Mm-hmm.
And they sent beasts in to destroy the fortress and essentially also destroy all the mana. And the only way to stop that was a hero used the mana sword to destroy the fortress on his own. And now everyone is sort of trying to regather the mana so that they can rebuild the fortress for some reason. I don't know, it seems like a dumb idea to me, but sure. And kind of leading that charge is this sorcerer Thanatos, who's hoping to create a peaceful new world. And we all know what that's code for.
I mean,
Thanatos.
his His
The
name's
king.
Thanatos. So
Yeah.
what's Thanatos? What's is it Thanatos? It's not Thanatos.
Emma, I have only read it, and I don't think it is pronounced in the game.
Okay. Well, like that's just the god of death, right? So why'd you just snap at me?
It's like,
Oh, Thanos.
yeah.
That's probably where it's from, actually.
I'm sure that it is.
Not like from this game. I'm
Well,
saying
yes.
Thanatos is a real
I do
mythological
feel
figure.
that Thanos, the character from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and just the Marvel comic universe, is not from Secret of Mana. Yes.
I just meant Thanatos, the mythological being.
Anyway, he's trying to, create a peaceful new world, which means he's going to take over the world. Ultimately, he takes over the rebuilt Mana Fortress, which you sort of helped reconstruct by visiting all the Mana temples, and tries to possess Prim's boyfriend, who she's engaged to someone else.
Diluc. Diluc is also a great name.
Remember when you were hating on Randy a moment ago?
I just imagine, like, a man with the face of Donald Duck.
Oh,
That's
no.
Diluc.
Oh, no.
Like, not like an actual duck face, just like a human face that is also the face of Donald Duck.
I like that even worse. I do not like that. I do not like that one bitch. Anyway, Thanatos destroys the mana tree, which unleashes the mana dragon, and then Diluc sacrifices himself and you defeat Thanatos. The end. And you kill the beast. The mana dragon with the mana sword, destroying the mana. Including Pope Boy.
I was thinking again about like your question about why this is so beloved. I think that in series where not everything is brought westward too, there tends to be like a sort of love and protectiveness of it because it's such like the third game in this series was not localized until this summer. So like because it's such like a little niche thing, right? The nicher something is, the more the people who love it, I feel like.
That's a bold theory, but I'll allow it.
Why is it a bold theory?
I don't know. You have no evidence to back it up, but anecdotally it seems true.
Like, when you love something that's, like, obscure, right? And then you'll get, like, really excited when you meet somebody else who's like, yes, I love that thing too. And then you talk about how much you love it, and you lean into that love, right? Or when you're, like, talking to somebody about what they should play next, you're like, oh, try this, I love it. So all these conversations, because you don't talk about it that much, because there's not very many people to talk to about it, is all sort of positive about the game. So everything is reinforced as positive.
Fair enough. That checks out. Let me talk about another interesting thing about Secret of Mana, which is its development process, which sounds horrible. So it was originally going to be for this abandoned, I've seen it someplace referred to as the SNES CD add-on, also as the Nintendo PlayStation, which was a partnership between Nintendo and Sony that ultimately did not happen. And then Sony released the PlayStation as its own thing. And as you might know, the PlayStation runs discs, or CDs, as you might have picked up from the SNES CD, and the SNES and pretty much everything Nintendo has ever done.
Except for the Wii.
I was thinking that. I was like, did the Wii have CDs? And I couldn't remember, but it did.
The Wii and the Wii U had CDs.
So other than the Wii, Nintendo has always
So did
released
the
things...
GameCube. They had little ones.
Okay. Did they?
Yes, the GameCube was like tiny discs.
Fine. Apart from those three major consoles that are important parts of Nintendo history, Nintendo has always released things on cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know this. I guess it should have been intuitive, but cartridges hold a lot less data than CDs.
Yep.
So, like, what I was reading is that, like, a PlayStation disc holds, like, 600 megabytes of data, I think. Might have been 480. Can't remember, but something in that realm. And a cartridge holds 2. 2.
Yes.
So, fortunately, it doesn't seem like they were planning to use all these hundreds of megabytes, but they did have to cut down what the developers estimated was 40% of the game. So, originally, it was planned to have multiple endings like Chrono Trigger, which sort of spun off from this, and some ideas that were intended for this and couldn't be in there. It was apparently supposed to be much darker, but because they had to fit it down to fit on the cartridge, they had to cut all of that. Also, apparently in the game, like, you can sort of see some of this in the game, not just in that the story is sort of simple and that kind of thing, but that sometimes you'll, like, go into dungeons that look like they're going to be, like, big, huge Zelda sprawling dungeons, and it's, like, just, like, a room. So you could sort of see how in places they had to cut things down. This also affects something that you just don't think about today, but in the localization, because things were like fixed font size and fixed text width and fixed kerning, and Japanese conveys a lot more words in smaller space because of the characters. The English localization was not only completed in a month, the guy said it almost killed
Christ.
him, but he had to cut out a lot.
Oh, Pope boy, you might say.
But he had to cut out a lot of information and a lot of dialogue because it just wouldn't fit.
Yep. Yeah. When you have a limited text space, localization is very hard to deal with.
It's also pretty notoriously sort of buggy. Probably also due to the having to downgrade everything to fit on a cartridge. The hitboxes for enemies are kind of wonky. But it's also notoriously has great music that was designed specifically for the SNES, like to take advantage of sounds that sound good coming from it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Anyway, they've recently re-released Secrets of Mana in this 3D version that you can play on the PS4 or computer, I think. And I was reading some reviews of that, and it was interesting how people were talking about, things that you would accept as limitations in the 16-bit top-down sprite version feel a lot wonkier and a lot more apparent in a game that's been reconstructed on modern graphical software.
Right. I think whenever I last talked about the Tales of Vesperia remake, or maybe it was in the blog or whatever, but I think I talked about how, like, even that's like a 3D game, right? It came out, it was a 3D game already. So that's a lot more recent than Secret of Mana, even. But it has so many inconveniences. Like, there are just random events that happen. Like, you have to, like, check back at every single city before going on to the next city in case you miss, like, any side quests or important plot information or anything like that. Because they will just randomly show up, but there's never any indication that there's anything new there, right? Or just, like, a comprehensible world map is not available, really. So you just kind of have to be like, I guess I'm going this way. I'm not sure. So it's interesting always when, like, things get remade or even just remastered, and just, like, when they don't add modern conveniences, because they, like, with Vesperia, a lot of it is, like, I think they expect you to just have a strategy guide next to you, if you really want to catch everything, whereas that's just not a thing that games do anymore, so they have to be more upfront with
that happened with the Collection of Mana release too. That when it was released in Japan, like, Trials of Mana had like a 48-page manual that came with the game when it was originally released, and they didn't give you any of that, and these games don't really have tutorials in the release, and so Square had to, like, upload it online a few days after because people were so confused and needed so much help. So it is interesting. And I do want to talk a little about, what do you think is the successful path to re-releasing these old games? Because Secret of Mana is kind of interesting in that it has been released in both forms, right?
Yeah.
We have the new collection on Switch, and I think it was also on the Virtual Console on the Wii.
Yeah.
And also for like the little SNES, like the things
Yeah,
they've been selling.
the little mini SNES thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that, it's basically untouched. I was even reading some reviews that were like, they didn't add any new content to this. Like, you can play the music in the menu, that's it. And then on the other hand, we have this sort of like wildly re-graphicked version that does add some quality of life upgrades, apparently. Like, you don't have to grind quite as much. But it's still kind of buggy and made some changes that people didn't like. So, with a game like this, that, even though it was beloved, it wasn't perfect for plenty of understandable reasons when it came out. How do you think you handle that?
Well, I think it just depends on the goals of the developer, right? Are you just like, well, we want people to keep playing this, so we need to put it on a modern system? Like, in that case, you just sort of redo it so that it plays on a modern system, and maybe if there were any, like, egregious errors in the original one, you fix those up. Like, oh, there were spelling errors in the script, in the localized script, so let's go back and fix all the typos or something, right? But if you're remaking it, I don't know. Like, on one hand, like, if you're remaking it, I feel like you have to be remaking it with the appetite of a modern consumer in mind. And also, if you're already putting that much effort into remaking it, like, I at least find it more interesting when you also take that opportunity to add things or change things or think about the story again from your new experiences as a designer or whatever. Or if it's an entirely new design team bringing their own philosophy to it, right? Like, I think it's important, and that game archival is really important, right? I never think that a remake of something, just like movies, a remake of something should never entirely eclipse the original, particularly from a historical standpoint. But like stuff like, the Yakuza games, the 2 remakes that they've done, like, yeah, the story is mostly the same. It's just updated graphics, but they added a lot of like mini games and sort of side quests that took a lot of influence from their experience making Yakuza 0, because that was so well received, and they had learned a lot from making all these Yakuzas with like better side quest writing and, like fun extra activities. And now that they have all this space and room to put that in the game, they're like, let's put that in the game. And even like remasters, they've changed just because of like politics, our new moral values as a society. They're like, this stuff just isn't acceptable anymore, so we're going to take it out of our game. With some of the just remasters that they've released. And then you have like Final Fantasy VII, where like it's a lot of the same team, but they're taking the game and being like, okay, we've got all these resources now. What new things can we say and do with Final Fantasy VII? And they might even be taking it far too over the top, but I'd much rather that than not doing anything to it at all besides like adding pretty graphics.
You'll regret that when it's a 400-hour game.
I mean, it's going to be. But I don't know. I won't regret it, I don't think. But I just think like remaster, sure. Like, just remaster it, right? Or re-release it or whatever. Fix anything that's particularly glitchy or buggy or wrong about it. But when you're going so far as to make a remake, you should really like be assessing everything about the game and be like, it should be sort of like making a new game. It should, but with a base, right? I think that's how most people should approach remakes.
I think one of my side quest topics for our new format eventually is going to have to be, how do you decide what games are worth those remakes, though? Because Secret of Mana it seems to have, I mean, granted, maybe they didn't go far enough, right? But remaking it in the new form and even making some changes seems to have lost some of what was magic about the game for people. And that some of, the bugs and things were more acceptable when they were in this format of what they were on the SNES, as opposed to when they're exposed in 3D glory.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see reception to Trials of Mana, especially since probably a lot of people playing that will have no experience with the original version of the game.
Everything I've read, and granted this is from, people who were probably big fans before it came here, so take it with a grain of salt, but is that Trials of Mana is actually the better game, but no one has ever played it. I mean, not no one. People in Japan are people, but...
Yes. That comes back to my my theory on why Mana is loved so much, right? Like, nobody's played the third one, so if you love it, you love it, right?
It's the Earthbound effect, right?
Sure, yeah. Except Mother 3 is really good.
Well, yes.
I can't say I've played the third Mana game, so I can't make a judgment on that. And probably it is also very good.
So, are you ready to... I was going to say once more, but we haven't talked about it before. Talk about Into the Breach.
I'm ready. Let's go into it.
So, Into the Breach is very different from Secret of Mana, so I'm excited to see how we're going to mash these up. It came out last year in 2018. It's a turn-based strategy game from the Chinese indie studio, Subset Games. I feel like you don't see too many games coming out of China. Anyway, Subset Games, most famous for their 2012 game, FTL, Faster Than Light.
Yes.
Where you play as a pilot, a spaceship pilot, who is increasingly in dire situations, and is a very hard game. And Into the Breach takes seemingly a lot of the lessons they learned from that game and apply it to something that seems very different, but in ethos it has some of the same kind of challenges. So it's out for computers and for Switch, because everything's on the Switch. And you're in the future, you're humans fighting monsters, classic. The monsters are called the Vek, and you're in these like giant mech things that you get to fight the monsters with. And you control 3 at a time, which is going to make for excellent mashup material. Gotta be 3-player game.
3 is the magic number.
It doesn't make sense. Multi-taps can have 4.
But 3, Madelyn. 3 is an important number.
You're right. My mistake. So you control 3 mechs, and you're on this 8x8 grid in all of these levels, and basically your goal is you have some kind of actual accomplish a task thing to do, but always you are trying to protect the buildings, because they provide power to you, and if too many are destroyed, your mechs die.
Yep. But your mechs also die if they're destroyed.
That's true. They are not invincible.
But you can heal them by not moving. But then, what if you don't move and they attack something else, So it's that sort of tactics type game. Yes. On a very small map.
However, there's lots to think about on that very small map. Something I thought was interesting about this game is that it gives you every piece of information. I felt insecure just reading about this, because I could just see myself playing this game, and usually when I'm bad at games, I can say it's the game's fault. But this game gives you all the information, so if you're bad, it is because you are bad. Mm-hmm. So you always know where the Vex are going to attack, you always know like what weather events might happen, you always know everything that's going to happen, basically, and it's just up to you to decide what you want to do to combat that. It also kind of carries over from level to level, so there are all these different kind of 8x8 grids and missions on different islands that you can play pretty much in any order you like, seemingly. And the power that you lose carries over from mission to mission. So if you have a lot of power buildings that get destroyed in one mission, that impacts how powerful your mechs are in the next one. So your decisions compound, which is something that is kind of carried over from FTL as a foundational mechanic, apparently. But also was reminding me of Pathologic, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Obviously a very different game, but these games that kind of make your decisions matter in ways that aren't like classic, like dialogue-based, you decisions matter ways seem to be very hip this past couple years. And understandably, because we like to feel like our decisions matter, and we're all maybe a little disillusioned with dialogue, quote-unquote, decisions that matter.
Yes. But my understanding of it from just, like side watching knowledge is that you can't, like, really win. Like, you make progress, but there's not, like, really an end state, is there?
I'm not sure. It feels like you have to eventually finish all the missions, right?
I guess so.
The
Like, you play a lot of very short little battles, but then you just keep moving on to the next battle and the next battle.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's actually an ending or if the battles just continue, because they're procedurally generated. So
yeah.
Maybe they do just keep coming.
That's been my understanding of it, just from the little I've seen of it. It's very much not my kind of game, right? I like tactics games where you just, like, destroy everybody with your tactics, right? And you don't have to, like, worry about, like, you know.
Emma likes easy tactics games.
I like tactics games where the goal is not to sacrifice anything. You know?
Oh dear. You feel like too much Fire Emblem.
That is my main kind of strategy game, right? That and, like, Final Fantasy Tactics are, like, the two that I have really played. I guess I also played, like, Jeanne d'Arc on my PSP, but that was a long time ago. But this one is very much about, like, you have to, like, sacrifice buildings and mechs in order to get the most gain or the least loss, right?
One thing that is cool, though, is there's a kind of a time travel mechanic. So, one, within it, they have a kind of a Divine Pulse-esque thing, where once a battle, you can take backsies and start over your turn. But also, if you're in a situation where all your mechs die, hey, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the game. However, that's sort of rewarded, because you can take one of your pilots back with you. And your pilots have special skills, and they grow stronger over time. So the game actually kind of rewards you for failing in some ways, which is something that I appreciate, especially as someone who was very recently very frustrated with Wolfenstein taking away my ammo when I died.
But see, it's also kind of, like, difficult, right? Because theoretically, when you take a pilot back, you're leaving all your other pilots basically in this failed world.
You know what? We don't think about the implications of it, Emma. We just do it.
But that's the point, right? Like, I thought it was interesting when I was reading about the development that they're like, we wanted you to feel sad and kind of guilty about it whenever things got destroyed or you left people behind or whatever. Because even when it's like they don't have faces, or maybe they, I don't know, do they? They have, but they're there, there are people there, and they have sort of personalities, and you get attached to them, even though, like, mostly what you see of them is just, like, a building or some sort of big, like, interchangeable mech, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you still, like, you know, feel like you want them to survive, even when that's generally impossible.
Well, they were also sort of inspired by the idea, this whole buildings idea, as they had, watched a bunch of superhero and action movies, where it's like, the hero won, but, like, the whole city is destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to grapple with that, which I thought was interesting, an interesting take on that. An interesting take on a boring movie watcher take. You know what I mean? It's like, you come out and it's like, that one guy's like, oh, but the city's destroyed.
Yeah.
I'm that one guy.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, peace out, dude.
Go make a video game about it, why don't you?
Okay. I don't know. It seems like the kind of game that I want to think would be fun for me, but like I said, and like you said, we like easy games.
I did not say that. You put your putting words in my mouth.
Whatever, you agreed to it.
I actually wish that this Fire Emblem was a little bit harder. That's just a side note.
Well, you should have upped the difficulty level.
I
That's
should've.
your own fault.
It's my fault. You're right. It is. But yes, just like Pathologic 2, this one is one that you should like if you didn't dislike losing so much.
I really don't like losing.
I know. It's a problem, Madeline.
But I like puzzles. So I'm sort of...
So maybe you think of it like that, right? It's a puzzle. It's like a 5,000 piece puzzle.
Oh,
So you'll
like
never
puzzles.
be finished, and sometimes somebody will like knock into the desk and knock some of the pieces to the floor.
It's like a 5,000 piece puzzle where if you pick up the wrong piece and try to put it in the wrong place, someone dismantles the whole puzzle. And you have to start
Exactly
again.
like that.
And that doesn't sound fun.
Doesn't it? I think it sounds so fun.
That's my problem. I really like the idea of games that sort of force you back to the beginning with new powers and you play through it again, but I also find that deeply frustrating and kind of boring.
They're like roguelikes, right? That's what that
Yes.
is?
Yes.
Yeah, I can only do those when, like, there's some sort of story that still changes every time you die, right? Like, Hades and Dead Cells, like, every time you die, there's something new to, like, talk about with people there, or you can go a different direction or something. I guess there's a little bit of that in this, right? In that,
Yes.
you're talking to pilots and stuff.
But I am a strong believer in a healthy amount of checkpoints. You know?
As somebody who played the original Prince of Persia for the podcast once.
Oh my god. I hated it so much. I knew how to do it, and sometimes I would just make, like, stupid clicking mistakes, and it'd be like, why do I have to go all the way back? I've proven that I can do this.
Well, that's a little different from that.
I know it's different than that, and I know it's not at all the same, and I don't mean to be ragging on this game. I'm mostly roasting myself, okay? Just turning myself over the fire.
Mal just likes to rag on the games that we talk about. It's her role.
No, I don't.
It's your job. It's your, like, assignment. And then I'm here to say that you're being silly. And that's the general structure of our
I
podcast.
think this game sounds fun and interesting. I just wish I was mature enough to play it.
That's also your role.
This game is rated M for mature because you have to be willing to be frustrated.
Yeah. That's what the rating should actually be. Like, how much of a child are you in terms of, like, losing? Right? It shouldn't be like, oh, there's blood and gore in this. It should be like, this game's hard and you will feel bad and you will lose. So it's rated M.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, that might resolve a lot of the, like, people wanting easy modes for things. Like, you have a rating for blood and gore, and you have a rating for how frustrating is this going to be for you.
It would be a good way to warn people, at least, that what they were getting into.
It's emojis, though.
It's emojis.
Yeah.
Like, happy smiling emoji, clenched teeth emoji, really angry emoji, dead emoji.
Yes.
Does that
And
seem
then
right?
Arbitrarily, frog emoji.
That's the hardest one?
No, that's the one that it's mysterious.
They don't want you to know?
Yeah.
They're like, telling you the difficulty would be a spoiler, so here's a frog emoji.
Is there a guy whose brains are coming out now? Or is that hair?
I'm sorry?
I'm gonna send you this emoji so you can evaluate it for me. I was looking
I did not connect that to emojis for a second.
I'm sorry, I was looking for good emoji ideas for my new difficulty rating system. I think this man's head is exploding. I wonder what this is gonna look like on your Android. Anyway, giving you ideas for split screen.
I always need new emojis for split screen. It looks like there's like a big puff of smoke coming out of his head.
On mine, it looks a little more like brain.
This one, it's smoke. It's like a big, like,
Well, that's the pirate, the pilot, not the pirate, I've left behind.
Yarg.
Are you ready to try to mash these up?
No, but let's do it.
I started to despair. At first, I was really excited when I found it, like, both of them, like, it's 3 people and 3 mechs, it's gonna be so easy. And now I'm not thinking it's gonna be so easy.
It's Secret of Mana, but they're in mechs. So it totally is not Secret of Mana.
That doesn't seem good to me.
No, it doesn't.
I think there's a way to use, so Secret of Mana, really well known for its, like, ring system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a pretty innovative way to menu and change your items and change your tactics sort of mid-flow, which I thought was cool because you don't have to have everybody, like, pausing the game on their menu when you're playing local multiplayer.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So I feel like taking that ring system and trying to bring it to something a little more turn-based could be useful. Maybe what I'm creating is Final Fantasy, but...
Yeah, isn't the whole point of the ring system that it, like, or, like, part of the point of Secret of Mana is that it's not turn-based, too?
Yes. Part of the point of Secret of Mana is that it was an RPG that is real-time.
So
And,
what if it's real-time Into the Breach instead? But with trees.
Okay, so it's Into the Breach, but instead of protecting buildings, you have to protect... It's like an environmentalist...
So you're
Into the
fighting
Breach.
global warming
Basically, yes.
with mechs.
Yes. Neither of these games has any real political component to it. So, don't really know why this game suddenly became something people are going to tweet about, but...
Well, you know, Secret of Mana is very, like, emphasized on the nature, right? Like, that is the beauty of its environments and graphics, right? So you can kind of... Any game that, like, extols the beauty of nature is theoretically making a statement that they dislike global warming, right?
So, it's a real-time... We can incorporate the mana magic from Secret of Mana of you're protecting the trees that give you power, like, they power your magic. The trees and the nature, and, like, it doesn't have to just be trees. There can be mountains that do it, too, to shake up the terrain a little bit. And you're using magical beasts, maybe, to fend off the robots that are trying to destroy the nature.
So it's just fantasy environmentalist Into the Breach.
But
We've just reskinned it to make a political statement.
it's real time, and instead of time travel, it's magic revival.
God, real time would be stressful. What if I
Yes.
had, like, and this is just my frame of reference, okay? So I'm sorry to keep bringing up Fire Emblem, but what if Fire Emblem was just, like, real time?
Well, it would be called Fire Emblem Warriors, and that's
No.
pretty fun.
But not Fire Emblem Warriors. Just, like, it's the same sort of map view. And all your units are there, and then the enemy just charges you, and you have to handle it.
You know, that would probably be a pretty fun game.
You know what? That's just called war.
Yeah.
That's called the reality of war.
It's called World of Warcraft.
No, it's not.
I know.
Just because it has war in the title does not mean that that's what it's called.
Hush.
No, I will not let you be silly like this. You're no
So-
better than that now.
So it's like a real-time thing. You're protecting the trees. Is there a way for it to switch back and forth between real-time and turn-based? Not really, huh?
Well, maybe, like, everything's moving in real time, but then, like, when you enter a confrontation with one robot, for instance, it freezes so that you can sort of make your decision. Like the new Final Fantasy VII system, where
Yeah,
you can
see-
sort of freeze time.
I was thinking the ring system kind of reminded me of that in ethos, if not in actual execution. So what you've created, because in that game, remember, they are also fighting eco-terrorists.
You're right.
So what you've created is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
There you go, but with magical beasts, though.
Are there non-magical... What's a chocobo?
But chocobos aren't fighters.
Well, they are in our version. Just wait. As if they're not going to be fighters in the remake.
There is some sort of, like, animal experiment character in Final Fantasy VII.
Fire Fantasy.
Fire Fantasy. Three
Final
houses.
Emblem.
So I guess there still are magical creatures, sort of, I guess. More science magical creatures. But there is a tree, though, isn't there? Well, there's not a tree, but there's a life stream, so that's sort of like the mana tree.
It's an interesting
man.
stream of consciousness thing you're going on right now.
I was trying to think of anything in our game that wouldn't fit with Final Fantasy VII, but you're right, we just made a Final Fantasy VII spin-off. That's all we've done.
Let's make it 16-bit then.
Okay.
With great music.
I mean, it should be, right? Because Into the Breach is also... It's not 16-bit, but it's sort of pixel arty. It's not pixel art, but you know what I mean. It's not realistic.
What if it's turn-based until you enter combat, and then it's real-time?
That's an interesting twist.
You don't like it, but I thought it would be cool.
It's interesting. I don't really know how it would work.
So you would, as soon as you, like, had to confront one of the mechs, you would go into, like, the ring system of fighting them.
Okay. We could try it.
It's fine. It's going to be cut for space anyway.
You're right. We have a very limited space. Not because of any, like, system requirements, just because we've imposed it upon ourselves.
Look, good art isn't made without some limits.
It's true. It's true. But also not too many limits.
Also, we will write 1,000 pages of dialogue and have to fit them into 2 boxes.
Yes. Sounds good.
Well, we had a good run of pretty good crossovers, so we are bound to hit a dud.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even a dud. A magic rescreen of Into the Breach wouldn't be bad.
Reskin.
Rescreen.
What is a rescreen?
Well, it doesn't have a skin. You're playing it on a screen, so we've redone what's on the screen.
No.
A rescreen.
That's not the term. Oh, Madeline.
I'm just kidding.
But yes, we have to have a very bad mashup every once in a while. It keeps us from getting too arrogant.
Look, Final Fantasy VII is a great game.
And now you're getting another one.
It's a spin-off.
Yes.
Wink, wink.
I thought you were just gonna do the visual wink, and I was going to call you out for not letting the listeners know.
The listeners could hear.
The wink, they could hear your eye closing.
Truly they could.
They have got some great headphones.
Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in for this week's episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you enjoyed what you listened to this week, why don't you subscribe to the show? We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Overcast, Pandora Podcasts on the app, and pretty much anywhere that you can find your friendly neighborhood podcasts, you'll find our lovely little video game podcast. If you want to learn more about us and the show, you should also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read, like I said, about the show, about Emma and I, about our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, where my boyfriend is playing through Kingdom Hearts 3, and Split Screen, where Emma and I are so close to finishing Boys Over Flowers and still making our merry way through My Hero Academia. Plus lots of other good content. I'm sure Emma has like 20 Fire Emblem blogs coming soon.
I have 10 thoughts for 10 Blue Lions coming soon.
Well, watch out for that. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and we're on YouTube as Talk This Sisters. So be sure to follow us and subscribe there. And way back at subscribing, if you're on those pages, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to share the episode with your friends. So, Emma, are you ready to pull some games from the hat?
You sure bet I am.
All right,
so,
what are we going to be talking about in 2 weeks?
Our old game is going to be Max Payne.
Cool. Not painful at all. Heh.
I'm not dignifying that with a response.
That's fine.
And our new game is going to be My Friend Pedro. Or Pedro.
I've heard of that one.
That game is also about bananas.
Yes!
Just like Secret of Mana is actually about bananas.
All games are really about bananas when you think about it hard enough.
Really hard.
Well, folks, we'll be talking about that on our next main installment in 2 weeks. But tune in next week, you're not going to want to miss it, for the debut of our new side quest format. That's right, instead of doing our little news magazine, we're taking a pivot into talking about one topic in a little more depth. What other people are saying, what we think, what our opinions are. Other good conversation, as you would expect from Talk This. So,
Did you want to share the topic, or do you want to save it?
I was about to share the topics. People would get excited and start
thinking. Go ahead. Do it.
Why are you rolling your eyes at me?
I wasn't rolling my eyes. I was just asking a question, and now I'm giving you a verbal drum roll by keeping talking until you say the topic is.
So next week is my pick for our first one, and I've decided I want to talk about what makes a game good to play for all ages. We have younger sisters that we play games with. We played games as small children, and we also occasionally try to play games with our parents who are of varying video game proficiency. By varying, I mean very varying. So I want to talk about what makes a game fun to play with folks of all ages or of all experience levels. Is there something about the story? Is there something about the mechanics? What have other people been saying about this? I'm excited to talk about it.
Heck yeah.
So don't miss that next week. It's going to be super fun.
Heck yeah.
All right, folks. I'll do the sign off.
Heck yeah.
I hope this week you go bananas.